This video is exactly what you see in this title. What do you say when you don't know what to say? I think this is one of the biggest questions inside an introvert head. Or maybe just mine. Meanwhile, I remember when I was learning English a lot, I was the complete opposite. I would replay conversation in my head before it even happened. And I would imagine every possible question someone asked me. And I wanted to prepare every answer. But when the real conversation finally came, none of the answers show up. And maybe you've experienced too. Maybe someone asks, so what do you do? There are simple question that you've probably answered 100 times in your own language, but in English or in another language you are learning, they suddenly feel difficult. Your heart start beating faster and your brain start translating. You begin searching for the perfect grammar, for the perfect vocabulary, for the perfect pronunciation. And while you were busy searching, and yes, the conversation keeps moving. That used to happen to me all the time. So I convinced myself that maybe speaking confidently was only for people who are more outgoing than me. But looking back, I don't think that my personality was the real problem. The real problem was how I thought the conversation worked. It's like before I opened my mouth, I was already judging myself and it feels exhausting. That we spend years learning English, but when it's time to speak, it just makes me freezy. We learn vocabulary, we learn grammar, pronunciation, and listening to podcasts. And I know that all of these things are valuable, but no one really teach us how to do during those awkward moments. It's like, when our brain suddenly goes blank, the feeling like it's like I needed a simple trick, a simple way to keep talking, a simple system that would help me continue the conversation, even when I wasn't confident. But one day, I realized that conversations aren't speeches. They are not presentation. They are not interviews. And they are not performance. They are simply an exchange between two people. Instead of asking myself, what should I say? I started asking a different question. What should I do next? Because when I focused on finding a perfect sentence, I froze. But when I focused on taking the next small step, speaking became much easier. And that's when I discovered a simple pattern that I still use today. Not because it's a magic, but because it reminds me that conversations don't have to be perfect. They just have to keep moving. The pattern is this: listen, ask, and share. Every conversation is simply moving between these three things. You listen what the other person says. You ask something because you were curious. And then you share something about yourself. And before you know it, you are listening again. The conversation keeps moving because both people are moving together. It's not because one person always has the perfect grammar answer. It because the conversation keep moving, flowing like a water. And after I realized that, I stopped believing that confident meant I always knowing to say. Instead, I started believing that confident meant trusting myself even when I didn't. And that's exactly what I want to share on this video. Because the next time your mind goes blank, I didn't want your first thought to be, my English isn't good enough. Just thinking like, what's my next small step? So let's finally answer the question in the title. What do you say when you don't know what to say? The answer is probably much simpler than you think. You don't always need to find the perfect sentence. Sometimes you just need to buy a little time to yourself. For years, I thought confident people answer the question immediately after someone asked a question, and they already had the perfect response. And I thought that's what confidence looked like. But then I started paying closer attention. I watch interviews, I watch podcasts, and a conversation between people. And I noticed something interesting. I know that confident speakers pause, they laugh, they think, and they even say things like, that's a good question. Let me think. I also think those were meaningless. It's like they were meaningless words. But now I think different. Now I think they are some of useful words you can learn. Yes, they are not really answering the question, but they are giving you brain permission to think. Imagine someone asks you, why did you decide to learn English? Instead of forcing, I could simply say, that's actually a really good question. Or I simply say, I've never really thought about that before. Now you are giving yourself 2 or 3 extra seconds. Whenever my mind were blank, I stopped asking, what's the perfect sentence? Instead, I asked, what's the next small sentence? That changed everything. If someone asks, what are your hobbies? I didn't try to give the perfect sentence, the long sentences to describe my hobbies, but I simply said I enjoy learning languages. And that's enough. Then they ask another question, and yes, you answer again. That's how conversation grow, one small sentence at a time. I learned the same lesson when I started making videos. I thought I needed perfect condition. I needed perfect confidence. And I thought I needed perfect pronunciation. But I was wrong. Confidence doesn't work if you never taking action. It doesn't come before action. It comes because of action. Yes, speaking English works the same way. You speak first and then confidence catch up in your brain. When you don't know what to say, don't leave the conversation. Pause, smile, and ask another question. Or simply say, give me a second. Could you repeat that again? That's okay, that's not embarrassing. Because your goal is to keep the conversation alive, not to make a perfect sentences while the conversation keep moving. I realized that speaking English isn't about showing your best, your perfect sentences. It's about connecting with other person. So yeah, stop chasing perfect sentences and start building real conversation. Thank you so much for spending your time here with me. I hope this made your English journey feel a little less overwhelming and a little more human.